The night she showed up at my estate, I was covered in blood, knuckles still throbbing from delivering a message to a traitor, thinking about nothing more than which loose end to tie up next and getting through another cold evening alone. I had no idea that within 24 hours my entire world would be turned inside out because one sentence spoken by a stranger. My name's Harry Mark, and I've spent the last 16 years building an empire most people pray they never have to see. Chicago's underworld isn't glamorous. It's cold negotiations in the back of warehouses, blood on expensive suits, and the kind of silence that comes from making sure no one ever crosses you twice. I was 14 when I watched my father bleed out on the kitchen floor, a bullet through his chest from a rival family who thought they could take what was ours. I learned 2 lessons that night: trust no one and never let anyone close enough to hurt you. By the time I turned 20, I'd taken back everything they stole and made sure everyone knew the Mark name meant fear, respect, and consequences. My estate sits 30 minutes outside the city, surrounded by iron gates, security cameras on every corner, and men who take a bullet before they'd let a threat reach my front door. I built walls, literal and metaphorical, to keep the world at a distance. Inside those walls, I controlled everything: the flow of money, the loyalty of my crew, the rhythm of my carefully calculated days. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when everything changed. I'd just finished handling a supply chain issue. My knuckles were bruised, my shirt had blood spatter I'd need to burn, and I was pouring myself a drink in my study when my head of security burst through the door, something like confusion on his face. Marcus never looked confused. "Boss," he said, his hand still on his weapon. "There's a woman at the gate. She walked right up to the call box. No car, no backup. She's asking for you by name." I didn't get surprise visitors. Anyone who knew where I lived knew better than to show up uninvited. Anyone who didn't know where I lived shouldn't have been able to find it. "What does she want?" I asked, already calculating which rival family had sent her and how I'd make them regret it. Marcus hesitated. "She says she needs to talk to you. Says it's urgent. Says she—" he cleared his throat. "Says she needs a husband by tomorrow." I should have had her turned away. I should have had her background checked, her motives investigated, her every connection traced back 3 generations. Instead, something in Marcus's tone, maybe the bewilderment, maybe the faint note of pity, made me curious. "Bring her to my study and stay armed." 5 minutes later, Esther William walked into my world, and nothing was ever the same again. She wasn't what I expected. No designer clothes, no practiced seduction, no hidden weapons I could detect. Just a woman in her mid-20s wearing a cardigan that's seen better days, jeans with mud on the knees, and eyes that held the kind of desperation that comes from having absolutely no options left. Her hands were clasped in front of her like she was praying, but her spine was straight, her chin lifted. She looked at me. Really looked at me, not at the dragon tattoo coiling up my neck, not at the blood still visible on my knuckles, not at the gun on my desk, and said 5 words that would change both our lives forever. "I need a husband by tomorrow." I gave her 10 minutes to explain herself, standing behind my desk with my arms crossed while Marcus kept his hand near his weapon. Esther didn't waste a single second. Her father had died 6 months ago, leaving her a trust fund worth $8 million and controlling shares in William Holdings, a legitimate import-export business. But there was a catch. She had to be married before her 25th birthday, which was tomorrow at midnight, or everything went to her Uncle Vincent. "He's already tried to kill me once," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. 3 weeks ago, my brakes failed on the highway. The mechanic said the lines were cut. Vincent wants me dead, Mr. Mark, but he'll settle for me being broke and powerless." I studied her face for signs of deception. Found none. Just exhaustion and a kind of desperate courage that reminded me of a cornered animal choosing to fight rather than die quietly. "Why me?" I asked. "There are easier ways to find a husband in 24 hours. "Because Vincent has connections to the Costello family,"
she said, meeting my eyes. He has lawyers, money, and people who'll swear I'm mentally unstable if I try to fight him legally. I need someone he can't threaten, someone powerful enough that he won't dare touch me. She swallowed hard. I need someone like you. Smart girl. Terrified, but smart. I should have said no, should have sent her back out into the night to solve her own problems. But Vincent William had ties to the Costellos, my oldest rivals, and the idea of taking something they wanted, even by proxy, had a certain appeal. Plus, $8 million could be useful for expanding my operations, and a legitimate business made for excellent money laundering. This is a business transaction, I told her. Nothing more. You get your inheritance, I get access to your company's shipping routes and financial legitimacy. We stay married for 1 year, then divorce quietly. You don't ask questions about what I do, and I don't let Vincent touch you. Understood? She nodded so quickly I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We were at the courthouse by 11:45 that night, my lawyer, Leo, serving as witness, while a sleepy judge pronounced us husband and wife. Esther's hand shook when she signed the marriage certificate. Mine didn't. I'd signed worse documents with steadier hands. By 1 a.m, we were back at my estate. Marcus carried her single, battered suitcase inside, while I gave her the rules. Stay within the property line, don't answer the door or phone, trust none of my men completely, and never, under any circumstances, enter my office unannounced or ask about my business. Your bedroom is upstairs, second door to the left, I said. Mine is at the end of the hall. We won't be sharing. She looked around at the marble floors, the expensive art on the walls, the cameras in every corner, and finally back at me. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't tell her that people who thanked me usually regretted it later. She'd figure that out soon enough.
The first attack came 3 days after the wedding. My driver, Tommy, was bringing the car around front to take Esther to retrieve some belongings from her apartment when the explosion tore through the morning quiet. I was in my office when I heard it, a sound like thunder swallowing the earth, and by the time I reached the driveway, there was nothing left but burning metal and a crater in the asphalt. Tommy had a wife and 2 kids. I'd known him for 8 years. He died because Vincent William wanted to send a message. Esther stood at the window, her face drained of color, watching the flames. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." That's when I realized this girl had more steel in her spine than I'd given her credit for. 2 days later, her apartment building went up in flames. Arson, the fire marshal said, though the official report would call it an electrical fault. Esther lost what little she had left of her old life, photographs of her parents, her mother's jewelry, everything. The anonymous threats started arriving after that, envelopes with no return address containing photos of Esther at the grocery store, at the post office, walking in the garden. Someone was always watching. I assigned her a bodyguard, my best man, Raphael, and made a decision that surprised even me. If Vincent was going to keep coming, Esther needed to know how to protect herself. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., shooting range in the basement, I told her over dinner that night. She was picking at her food, barely eating. You're going to learn how to handle a gun. She looked up, those desperate eyes now holding something harder. Okay. I taught her everything. Grip, stance, breath control, how to aim for center mass and shoot without hesitation. She was terrible at first, flinching every time the gun went off, but she kept trying. By the end of the week, she could hit a target at 20 feet. By the end of the month, she never missed. The strange thing was, we started talking. Not during the day when my men were around and business needed handling, but late at night when the house was quiet. I'd find her in the library, unable to sleep, or she'd hear me moving around downstairs and come down to find me drinking whiskey in the dark. She told me about her father, how he'd been a good man trying to build something legitimate, how Vincent had always resented him for it. I told her about mine, about the night I watched him die and decided I'd never be weak again. "You're not weak," she said one night, surprising me. "You're scared.
There's a difference. No one had called me scared in 16 years. No one had been stupid enough or brave enough. But when Esther said it, sitting across from me in the darkness with a cup of tea going cold in her hands, it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like someone finally seeing past the monster to the boy who'd never stopped bleeding. The walls I'd built so carefully were starting to crack, and I couldn't decide if I wanted to repair them or let them fall.
Vincent made his move 6 weeks into our marriage. An emergency board meeting at William Holdings called with enough legal backing that Esther couldn't refuse to attend. He was claiming fraud, arguing that our marriage was a sham designed to circumvent her father's will. He wanted her inheritance frozen pending investigation and himself installed as interim CEO. Leo called me at 4 a.m. with the news. "They're also bringing in the FBI," he said quietly. "Not just for the inheritance dispute. They're looking at you, Harry. Vincent's given them enough breadcrumbs to start connecting your business dealings to the company's shipping routes." I should have seen it coming. Vincent wasn't just trying to take Esther's money. He was trying to destroy us both. Use the legitimate investigation into the marriage as cover to expose my entire operation. The Costellos had probably helped him build the case, eager to see me taken down by federal agents instead of bullets. "How bad?" I asked. "Bad enough that you need to decide what you're willing to lose." The board meeting was set for Friday afternoon. Esther spent Thursday night sitting at the kitchen table reviewing documents with Leo, her hands shaking every time she turned a page. I watched from the doorway, calculating odds and exits, trying to figure out how to protect her without exposing the empire I'd built on violence and blood money. "You don't have to do this," I said when Leo finally left. "We can disappear. I have resources, identities, money hidden where no one can trace it. We could be in South America by tomorrow night." She looked up at me, and for the first time since the car bomb, I saw tears in her eyes. "Running won't stop him. Vincent will take everything my father built and turn it into something dirty. I can't let that happen." She stood, crossing to where I leaned against the counter. "But I won't let you go down with me either. If the FBI is circling you because of me, maybe we should—" "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "We see this through." "Why?" she asked, and there was something raw in her voice. "This was supposed to be business, Harry. A transaction. You don't owe me anything more than what's in the contract." I looked at this woman who'd walked into my life with nothing but desperation and courage, who'd learned to shoot without flinching, who'd stood at my side through bombs and fires and threats, who'd somehow made me remember what it felt like to care about something beyond territory and reputation. "Because it stopped being business the night you called me scared," I said. "Because you're the first person in 16 years who looked at me and saw something worth saving." I reached out, cupped her face in my scarred hands. "Because I love you, Esther, and I'll burn down everything I've built before I let you take me from me." She kissed me then, tasting like tears and hope, and the kind of risk I'd sworn I'd never take again. The next morning, we walked into that boardroom together, ready for war. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Vincent presented his case with practiced precision. Bank records showing suspicious transfers, testimony from witnesses who claimed they'd never seen us together, photographs that supposedly proved our marriage was staged. He was confident, almost smug, thinking he'd already won. Then Leo opened his briefcase and Vincent's face went white. We had everything. Financial records showing Vincent's embezzlement from the company over the past 5 years, documented communication between him and known Costello family operatives, wire transfers linking him to the mechanic who'd cut Esther's brake lines and the arsonist who'd burned her apartment. I'd used every resource in my criminal network to gather evidence that would hold up in court, and it was devastating. "You son of a—" Vincent lunged across the table, but FBI agents were already moving. They'd been in the room the whole time, waiting for exactly this moment. That's when the windows exploded inward. Costello family shooters, 3 of them, coming through the glass with automatic weapons. Vincent had a contingency plan, and it was pure desperation. If he couldn't have the company, nobody would. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Esther dropped behind the table as I drew the weapon I'd sworn I wouldn't bring, and suddenly we were back in the world I knew best. Violence, split-second decisions, and survival. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. My men, positioned outside as insurance, stormed the building. The FBI agents engaged. When the smoke cleared, 2 Costello shooters were dead. 1 was in custody, and Vincent was on his knees with his hands zip-tied behind his back, screaming about immunity deals that would never come. Esther was bleeding from a cut on her forehead where flying glass had caught her, but she was alive. She was alive, and Vincent was finished, and the FBI had enough evidence to put him away for 20 years on RICO charges alone. It was over. The next year was transformation. Esther restructured her inheritance, using the money to fund women's shelters and victim advocacy programs. I started the slow, dangerous process of going legitimate, shutting down operations, cutting ties, making peace with old enemies. It wasn't easy. Some nights I still woke up thinking I'd made a mistake, that vulnerability was weakness, that the walls should have stayed up. But then Esther would be there, her hand in mine, reminding me why I'd chosen this. On the anniversary of our contract marriage, we stood on the rooftop of my Chicago penthouse under a sky full of stars. No lawyers this time, no judges or witnesses, just us, Leo officiating, and vows we'd written ourselves. "I promise to see you," Esther said, tears streaming down her face. "Not the monster you think you are, but the man you've always been underneath." "I promise to let you," I replied, my voice breaking on words I'd never thought I'd say, "to trust you with every broken piece of me." We kissed as husband and wife for the second time, but this time it was real. This time it was forever. 2 broken people who'd found wholeness in each other's scars, choosing love over fear, vulnerability over control. The best transaction I'd ever made.
If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to stay updated on new releases. Hit the like button to show your support, and share this with anyone who loves thrilling romance with a dangerous twist. Your support means everything and helps me continue bringing you stories of love, redemption, and second chances.